"Let me see your face, human." His refusal made her obsessed. For decades, humans had explored the outer edges of space, always searching for signs of intelligent life. Yet never had Elias expected to find a civilization so different, so alive with strange customs and ideas, that simply walking among them would challenge every belief he held. Zephyra was a world of floating cities and delicate towers made of crystal-like materials. The Aurelians, its dominant species, moved gracefully through the air and on land, their skin shimmering faintly under the sun's light. They had large, expressive eyes and subtle features that seemed almost musical in their symmetry. Humans had never encountered beings like them. The first moments of arrival were both beautiful and unnerving, for every Aurelian seemed to radiate intelligence and curiosity simultaneously. Elias adjusted his protective suit, feeling the weight of responsibility. He was not just a visitor, he was a representative of humanity. His mission was diplomatic, but he had learned quickly that diplomacy on Zephyra was unlike any human experience. Trust was earned not by words alone, but by sharing one's face. For Aurelians, exposing their face was a sacred act, a gesture of full honesty and connection. To refuse was considered rude, suspicious, or even offensive. The lead Aurelian scientist, Lurel, awaited him in the central chamber of the Crystal Palace. She floated effortlessly above the ground, her luminescent skin glowing faintly, casting a soft light across the walls. Her eyes widened slightly when she first saw Elias. She had heard of humans, of course, but hearing of someone was very different from standing before them. Humans were said to be fragile, unpredictable, and unremarkable. Elias, however, carried an air of calm determination that immediately made her curious. "Captain Rowan," she said, her voice melodious and echoing slightly as if the air itself were part of her speech. "Welcome to Zephyra. We are honored to meet you." Elias inclined his head politely, his suit's visor reflecting the crystalline light. "The honor is mine, Lurel. I hope we can understand each other despite our differences." Lurel smiled, a gesture that seemed to vibrate gently in the air around her. "There is one thing I must ask," she said. "Show me your face. It is our custom. Without it, we cannot truly trust you." Elias paused, aware of the delicate tension in the room. Human suits were designed to protect against unknown pathogens, environmental dangers, and even psychological effects of alien exposure. Removing it on Zephyra would put him at risk, and more importantly, it would violate a personal principle he had followed since leaving Earth. Humans valued privacy and choice. Exposing oneself fully to another species was not a trivial matter. "I cannot," Elias replied firmly but respectfully. "It is not just a matter of trust but of safety and principle. I hope you understand." Lurel's expression flickered, curiosity, surprise, and something else, something more intense. It was not anger or offense. It was fascination. Most beings, she thought, would have complied immediately, eager to make a favorable impression. This human, however, had refused. Boldly, calmly, without hesitation. It was unlike anything she had seen before. "Why not?" she asked softly, almost whispering. "Humans are said to be clever, but this is unusual. It is not mere fear, is it?" Elias shook his head. "It is caution, yes, but also respect. We do not reveal ourselves lightly, even to those who mean us no harm." Lurel floated closer, her gaze penetrating, as if trying to see through the opaque visor of his suit into the very essence of who he was. "I must understand," she said. "If you will not show me your face, I will watch, I will observe you, and perhaps in time I will learn why you refuse." Elias nodded, a little uneasy but maintaining his composure. He had faced challenges before, but there was something different about Lurel. She was intelligent, relentless, and patient. He could sense that her curiosity was more than academic, it was personal, almost obsessive. In the following days, Elias explored Zephyra under Lurel's careful observation. The cities were magnificent, built atop floating platforms that drifted gently in the atmosphere. Aurelians glided through the streets, communicating with subtle gestures and soft, musical tones. Every interaction seemed deliberate, every glance loaded with meaning. Humans, by contrast, were straightforward and blunt, which fascinated Lurel more than she cared to admit. Elias participated in simulations and cultural exchanges, never removing his suit. He demonstrated human problem-solving skills, repairing alien machinery with tools no Aurelian had ever seen. He solved complex puzzles by combining logic with intuition, something that seemed almost magical to Lurel. While Aurelians relied on precision and predictability, humans embraced uncertainty, using creativity as a weapon against rigid systems. Lurel followed him everywhere, sometimes openly, sometimes subtly. She asked questions about human life, about choices and principles, about fears and hopes. Elias answered honestly but always carefully, never revealing more than necessary. Every refusal, every small act of independence fueled her fascination. She began to respect him, not just as a guest, but as an enigma she could not solve. One evening, as the twin moons of Zephyra rose, casting silver light across the crystalline towers, Elias and Lurel observed the city from a high balcony. The air shimmered around them, carrying the faint scent of alien flora. Lurel spoke quietly, almost reverently. "You are different, Elias Rowan. Your people are different. I cannot explain it. You do not follow rules blindly. You do not fear what you do not understand. You choose even when it is difficult. It is remarkable." Elias allowed himself a small smile beneath his visor. "Perhaps that is the human way. We value freedom, even when it makes others uncomfortable." Lurel's gaze lingered on him, intense and unwavering. "It is more than that. There is strength in your refusal, a quiet power that demands attention. I must understand it fully. I must see why you hold yourself apart." Elias remained silent, knowing that words alone could not convey the depth of human principles. He understood her obsession had begun, but he could not change it. His mission was not to satisfy curiosity, but to represent humanity with integrity. Days turned into weeks. Elias navigated diplomatic negotiations, scientific demonstrations, and social ceremonies, all while keeping his face hidden. Lurel studied every gesture, every decision, every moment of hesitation or confidence. She was captivated not by his appearance but by his mind, his choices, and the quiet authority of someone who refused to be fully known. Other Aurelians grew restless. "Why does he not show his face?" they whispered. "Does he not trust us?" Lurel would defend him quietly. "He does trust, but in his way. Humans are not like us. They measure respect differently. Do not mistake caution for weakness." Her words were true. Elias' calm demeanor, his clever solutions, and his quiet resilience began to change the perception of humans. Where they had been dismissed as fragile or insignificant, they were now seen as unpredictable, strong, and worth observing carefully. One night, while reviewing data from the city's energy grids, Elias noticed a pattern that no Aurelian engineer had anticipated. A subtle fluctuation threatened to destabilize the floating platforms. With rapid calculations and clever improvisation, he adjusted the controls using human ingenuity rather than following protocol. The result was instantaneous. The platform stabilized and disaster was averted. Lura watched in awe. "You see things we cannot," she murmured. "You approach problems differently, not just with knowledge but with intuition. It is extraordinary." Elias nodded. "We adapt. It is necessary for survival. Perhaps humans appear fragile, but we have ways of thriving that others cannot see." From that moment, Lurel's obsession deepened. It was no longer just a desire to see his face. It was a desire to understand the human spirit itself. She began to follow him more closely, sometimes helping subtly, sometimes simply observing, as if every moment revealed a new layer of humanity that Aurelians could not comprehend. Despite her fascination, Elias remained firm. He interacted, he taught, he solved, but he never removed the visor. His refusal became a symbol of human strength, not defiance. Lurel learned something unexpected. Humans could be both open and private, powerful yet vulnerable, and their choices defined them more than their appearance ever could. As the days passed, the Aurelians began to talk differently about humans. They are strange, some said. But we must respect them. Lurel's influence was clear. She had not only observed Elias, she had changed how her people saw an entire species. Elias, meanwhile, remained focused on his mission. He did not seek admiration or curiosity. His goal was simple: represent humanity honestly, protect his people's values, and navigate the complexities of Zephyra's culture. Yet, without realizing it, he had become a catalyst for change, teaching an alien civilization about the quiet power of choice, integrity, and intelligence. And Lurel, watching from a distance, knew that this was only the beginning. The human before her was not just an individual. He was a window into a species that the galaxy had underestimated for too long. Her obsession was not shallow. It was the recognition of something extraordinary, something rare: the human spirit. She would continue to watch, to learn, and to understand. And perhaps one day, she would finally see the face that had captured her fascination, not because it was beautiful, but because it represented a mind and a will unlike any she had ever encountered. Until that day, Elias Rowan remained the mysterious human who refused, quietly, to reveal everything about himself. And in his refusal, he had already begun to change Zephyra forever. Days passed on Zephyra, yet the tension between curiosity and respect never faded. Lurel found herself more intrigued by Elias Rowan than ever before. Every time he solved a problem, approached a challenge, or simply moved through the luminous city, she felt a mixture of fascination and awe. Unlike the Aurelians, whose lives were carefully predictable and structured, Elias seemed to navigate the world with a quiet confidence born of uncertainty. It was an idea that she could not comprehend fully but wanted to understand. The next challenge arrived sooner than expected. The Council of Zephyra had invited Elias to participate in a series of tests designed to measure a species' intelligence, adaptability, and problem-solving ability. It was a traditional rite for visiting civilizations, but the tests were notoriously difficult, even for Aurelians. Many visiting species had failed entirely, often embarrassed by their lack of preparation or the rigidity of their methods. Elias agreed, of course, but he had one condition: he would not remove his helmet. The council hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with this request. Lurel stepped forward and spoke on his behalf. "He will participate as he is. Do not mistake his formality for weakness. Observe his mind, not his face." The council reluctantly agreed, though many exchanged skeptical glances. Humans had never performed well in previous trials. They were considered slow, unpredictable, and unreliable. Yet Elias entered the first chamber of the test with calm determination, unshaken by the whispers of doubt around him. The first trial involved a complex maze of floating platforms suspended above a vast chasm. Aurelians were expected to navigate it using precise calculations and mental projections of movement. Any error could result in a simulated fall and failure. Elias paused at the entrance, studying the patterns carefully. Where the Aurelians relied on pure calculation, he observed subtle shifts in the platform's energy flows. He moved carefully, sometimes pausing, sometimes stepping boldly, trusting intuition as much as logic. Lurel watched from the side, heart racing slightly. She noticed small differences that others ignored: the way he adjusted his weight, the subtle hesitations that indicated thought, the quiet confidence in his timing. When he reached the end, the chamber erupted with soft applause. The Aurelians were stunned. No human had completed this trial before. Lurel's fascination deepened. He had done more than succeed. He had done so by being himself, using human methods rather than mimicking Aurelian precision. The second trial tested perception and memory. A series of lights flashed across the chamber, forming intricate patterns. Participants were required to memorize and replicate them perfectly. Aurelians excelled at this, their minds capable of storing vast amounts of information with near-perfect accuracy. Elias observed the patterns and used a combination of visualization and reasoning, creating simple mental shortcuts that made the process manageable. He repeated the sequences successfully, occasionally pausing to verify details. The other participants whispered, impressed and confused. How could a human achieve this without the natural enhancements of Aurelian physiology? L'Oreal floated closer, unable to contain her excitement. You see the world differently, she murmured, almost to herself. You use what you have and make it more than enough. Elias glanced at her, a small gesture of acknowledgement. Sometimes limitations inspire solutions, he said quietly. The third trial was more challenging. It involved a simulation of a natural disaster, a sudden surge of energy that threatened a city's infrastructure. Participants were expected to stabilize the system using predictive models and rapid adjustments. Aurelians relied on their precise calculations and coordination, but the simulation required flexibility, adaptability, and creativity. Elias' approach was unorthodox. He combined observation with improvisation, adjusting controls in ways the Aurelians had never imagined. Small changes produced cascading effects that stabilized the system faster than any predicted solution. L'Oreal's eyes widened. This was not just intelligence. This was ingenuity, the kind of thinking that defied rigid logic. By the end of the trial, Elias had not only succeeded, but had set a new standard. Aurelians who had doubted humans began to murmur among themselves, recognizing that this species possessed an unexpected power. L'Oreal's heart swelled with admiration, her curiosity transforming into an obsession she could not ignore. She wanted to understand every nuance of his mind, every reason for his choices, every detail of the human way of thinking. After the trials, Elias and L'Oreal walked together through the floating gardens of Zephyra. The air shimmered with energy, and the luminescent plants cast soft reflections across their path. L'Oreal broke the silence first. "You are remarkable, Elias Rowan," she said. "Not because you have strength or technology, but because you think differently. You adapt, improvise, and challenge what we consider impossible. I must know more about your people. How can one species survive so far beyond what we would expect?" Elias considered her words carefully. "Humans have faced impossible odds before," he replied. "We survive not because we are stronger or smarter in the conventional sense, but because we refuse to give up. We use what we have, even when it seems insufficient. We rely on one another, trust our instincts, and never underestimate the power of choice." L'Oreal listened intently, captivated by the wisdom in his words. She realized that her obsession was not superficial. It was not about his face as she had initially believed. It was about understanding why humans were resilient, unpredictable, and extraordinary despite appearing fragile. Over the next several days, L'Oreal continued to challenge Elias. She created complex scenarios that tested decision-making, moral judgment, and strategy. Each time he responded with ingenuity, demonstrating the strength of human adaptability. Sometimes, he solved problems in ways that seemed reckless to Aurelians, yet they always worked. Other members of the council began to notice the shift. Humans were no longer dismissed as fragile. They were a species to be respected, their abilities and unpredictability commanding attention. L'Oreal's influence played a key role in this perception change. She spoke on his behalf, explained his methods, and emphasized the value of his perspective. Elias never wavered in his refusal to show his face. Some Aurelians tried to persuade him, using charm, reason, and even pressure. He remained calm and polite, always explaining that his choice was a matter of principle and safety. Lurel found this refusal even more fascinating. It was a form of strength that went beyond physical ability or intellect. It was a deliberate, thoughtful assertion of autonomy. One evening, during a quiet moment, Lurel asked him a question that she had been pondering for days. "Do you ever feel lonely, Elias Rowan, to hide so much of yourself, to refuse what others see as trust?" Elias looked out over the city, the lights of the floating towers reflecting in his visor. "Lonely, perhaps," he admitted, "but there is also freedom in it. I choose what I reveal when I reveal it and to whom. That choice is more valuable than any comfort that comes from exposing oneself prematurely." Lurel felt a pang of admiration. Humans were different in ways she could not fully describe. Their minds, their hearts, their principles, they were all connected in ways that defied Aurelian understanding. This was not mere curiosity, it was respect, awe, and an insatiable desire to understand. During a council meeting, an unexpected incident occurred. A malfunction in one of the city's energy cores caused minor chaos, threatening a group of Aurelians. Elias stepped forward, analyzing the situation with calm precision. Without hesitation, he devised a solution using tools and knowledge unfamiliar to the Aurelians. Within minutes, the crisis was averted. The council was stunned. Lurel could see their admiration, and their respect for humans grew exponentially. Elias had not only solved a technical problem, but had demonstrated the human ability to face danger with courage, creativity, and moral responsibility. Lurel's obsession intensified. She began spending more time with him, not just observing but engaging, asking questions, and creating scenarios to test human reasoning. Elias never complained. He understood that curiosity was part of learning. Yet despite the intensity of her attention, he maintained his boundaries, reinforcing the idea that humans were not to be fully known or controlled. One night, after a long day of collaboration and problem-solving, they sat together overlooking the city. The twin moons cast silver reflections on the crystalline towers. Lurel turned to him, her voice softer than usual. "You are unlike any being I have ever met," she said. "It is not just your intellect or skill, it is your presence. You challenge us, frustrate us, and yet inspire us. I cannot stop thinking about why you refuse to show your face." Elias smiled beneath his visor, a small gesture of warmth. "Some things are meant to be discovered over time," he said. "Trust, understanding, and respect are earned, not given automatically. That is true for humans and I suspect for your people as well." Lurel nodded slowly, feeling a mixture of frustration and admiration. She understood now that her obsession was not with his appearance, but with the essence of humanity itself. The courage to stand firm, the creativity to solve the unsolvable, and the wisdom to know when and how to reveal oneself. In the following weeks, humans' reputation on Zephyrus shifted further. Other species, observing the Council's reports and Lurel's testimony, began to reconsider their assumptions about humans. They were not fragile. They were not simple. They were intelligent, adaptable, resilient, and most importantly, they could not be predicted or controlled. Elias, meanwhile, continued his mission with quiet determination. He solved problems, negotiated disputes, and demonstrated humanity's unique strengths, all while keeping his visor firmly in place. Each act of ingenuity, each decision made with care and principle, became a subtle lesson for the Aurelians. Humans were a species that demanded respect, not compliance. Lurel observed every detail, documenting, analyzing, and learning. She realized that the human before her was not just a representative of a species but a symbol of something greater, the power of choice, the strength of intellect, and the beauty of autonomy. Her fascination had grown into a deep respect, bordering on admiration. And so, as Zephyr's moons rose high in the sky each night, Lurel continued her quiet vigil. She watched Elias Rowan, the human who refused to show his face, and understood that her obsession was more than personal curiosity. It was the recognition of a remarkable species, one that could challenge everything the Aurelians believed about strength, intelligence, and courage. Elias, unaware of the full depth of her observation, remained steadfast. He knew that his mission was not to satisfy curiosity, but to represent humanity with integrity, wisdom, and honor. Yet in every refusal, every clever solution, every act of calm bravery, he was shaping not only his destiny, but also the perception of his entire species across Zephyrah. And in this quiet, mutual understanding, the foundation of something extraordinary began to form, a respect that would grow, an admiration that would deepen, and an obsession that would evolve into something far greater than mere curiosity. The city of Zephyrah had never faced a threat like the one that arose that morning. A sudden surge of energy swept through the floating platforms, causing tremors that rattled the delicate crystal towers. The Aurelians moved with graceful urgency, their minds calculating every possible outcome, but panic rippled among them as systems began to fail. Elias Rowan, as usual, observed calmly. The surge was unexpected, and it was beyond the predictive models of even the most skilled Aurelians. He did not panic, nor did he hesitate. Instead, he took note of the patterns, the vibrations, and the subtle shifts in energy. Every detail mattered. Every second counted. Lurel arrived moments later, her expression tight with worry. Elias, the city's stabilization systems are failing. The energy cores are fluctuating unpredictably. If we cannot correct this, parts of the city could collapse, she said. Her voice trembled slightly, though her composure remained intact. She floated beside him, ready to assist, but she knew that the human's approach to problem-solving was often unlike anything the Aurelians had seen. Elias nodded. "Show me the data," he said simply. His eyes scanned the holographic projections floating in the air before him. Aurelians had already attempted to correct the surge using standard protocols, but each adjustment only made the instability worse. The situation was complex, and time was slipping away. He began analyzing the patterns quickly, drawing on human intuition as well as logical reasoning. Where the Aurelians relied solely on precise predictions, Elias considered the unexpected, the unpredictable, the possibility that systems could behave differently than theory suggested. He adjusted parameters subtly, testing outcomes in rapid succession, always staying one step ahead of the growing instability. Lurel watched in awe. His hands moved with precision, yet his mind seemed to reach beyond the data, sensing solutions that were invisible to the Aurelians' calculated methods. "You are extraordinary," she whispered. She felt the familiar pull of fascination, now stronger than ever. Elias was not just a guest, he was a force of nature, reshaping their understanding of intelligence and adaptability. Minutes passed and the tremors grew stronger. The platforms began to sway more violently, and the citizens below moved in panic. Elias did not flinch. He combined human ingenuity with Aurelian technology, improvising solutions that balanced energy output across multiple cores. He instructed Lurel to assist in ways she had never imagined, guiding her hands to adjust controls that seemed counterintuitive but were necessary for success. Finally, after what felt like hours, the surge began to stabilize. The tremors subsided and the energy levels returned to normal. The floating platforms leveled, the city lights flickered back into alignment, and the citizens below cheered quietly in relief. The Council of Zephyrah was stunned. No Aurelian alone could have managed this crisis so swiftly. Lurel hovered beside Elias, her eyes wide with admiration. "I have never seen anything like this," she said softly. "Your people, they are capable of so much." You solve problems that we cannot even comprehend, and you do it with calm, with confidence, with ingenuity. Elias allowed himself a small smile beneath his visor. We adapt. That is all. Humans survive by finding solutions where others see only obstacles. Sometimes it is instinct, sometimes it is reasoning, but always it is the willingness to try. The council convened immediately to discuss what had happened. Aurelians who had doubted humans now spoke with newfound respect. This human has shown strength and wisdom far beyond expectation, one said. Perhaps we underestimated this species. Lurel defended him further. Elias Rowan's actions are not just skill, they are human ingenuity, patience, and courage. We must observe carefully not only what humans do, but how they think. Elias continued his work with quiet focus, repairing secondary systems and ensuring that no residual instability remained. Lurel assisted him closely, learning more about his methods than ever before. Every small decision, every improvisation, every unexpected solution deepened her fascination. She realized that this human was not simply intelligent, he was unpredictable in a way that demanded respect. After the crisis, the city slowly returned to normal. The citizens of Zephyra moved cautiously, still talking in hushed tones about the human who had saved their homes. Lurel floated beside Elias on the highest platform, looking down at the city below. She could feel the weight of admiration and obsession building inside her, stronger than ever. You have changed the way they see humans, she said. They will no longer dismiss your species as weak or fragile. Your actions, they have made an impression that cannot be erased. Elias glanced at her. That was never my goal. I act for the sake of survival, for the sake of solving problems, not for recognition. Yet if humans gain respect through what I do, then that is a fortunate consequence. Lurel studied him carefully. There was something in the way he spoke, in the way he acted, that fascinated her beyond reason. His calmness under pressure, his refusal to follow conventions blindly, his insistence on principles over appearances, all of it drew her in. She had come to Zephyra curious about humans, but now she was obsessed with understanding them completely. The following days brought more challenges. Natural anomalies in Zephyra's atmosphere tested the city's stability, and Elias again demonstrated his unique approach. While Aurelians relied on rigid protocols and calculations, Elias embraced flexibility. He combined observation, intuition, and creativity, producing solutions that astonished everyone. Lurel documented every action, every decision, as if trying to map the human mind itself. Other Aurelians began to watch him closely as well. They whispered among themselves, recognizing that this human was not simply clever, he was something else entirely. Lurel encouraged their observations, subtly guiding their attention to his ingenuity and composure. Elias' quiet strength had become a symbol, challenging centuries of assumptions about what it meant to survive, to think, and to thrive. One evening, while analyzing residual energy fluctuations in the city, Lurel asked Elias a question that she had been considering for days. "Do you ever fear failure?" she asked. "To take risks, to act in ways others cannot predict?" Elias considered her question carefully. "Fear exists," he said, "but it does not control us. Humans assess risk, understand consequences, and then act. Sometimes we fail. Sometimes we succeed. But what matters is the willingness to try, to act with integrity, and to adapt when circumstances change." Lurel nodded slowly. She realized that her fascination with him had shifted. It was no longer just curiosity, it was admiration. The human before her represented qualities that the Aurelians had never valued fully: courage, adaptability, and the quiet strength of independent thought. She felt an obsession growing, one that went beyond personal interest. She wanted to understand the human spirit itself. The next test came unexpectedly. A series of energy storms approached Zephyra, threatening to destabilize the floating platforms and city infrastructure. The council called for an emergency meeting, and Lurel immediately suggested that Elias assist in stabilizing the systems. Elias worked alongside the Aurelians, his mind moving quickly to anticipate the storm's effects. He directed energy flows, adjusted core outputs, and improvised stabilizing measures. Where the Aurelians relied on protocol, he relied on observation and creativity, finding solutions that others could not see. Lurel floated nearby, her eyes fixed on him. Each decision, each subtle adjustment, revealed the human ability to act decisively under pressure. She realized that humans were not just intelligent, they were adaptable, resilient, and capable of surprising solutions in moments of crisis. Her fascination deepened into admiration and respect, her obsession growing with every passing day. The storms passed without major damage, and Zephyra remained intact. The council formally acknowledged Elias' contributions, praising his ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Aurelians who had once doubted humans now regarded them with new respect. After the crisis, Elias and Lurel stood together on a balcony overlooking the city. The twin moons reflected across the crystalline towers, casting a gentle glow. Lurel turned to him, her voice soft. "You are unlike any being I have ever known," she said. "You face danger with calm and certainty. You solve problems that we cannot even imagine. You inspire others not by force or appearance, but by intellect, courage, and choice. I do not understand fully, but I am compelled to know more." Elias remained silent for a moment, considering her words. "Curiosity is natural," he said finally, "but understanding takes time. Humans are complex, and there is more than one way to see the world. You will learn in time if you observe carefully and listen closely." Lurel nodded. She realized that her obsession was no longer superficial. It was a recognition of human potential, a desire to understand a species that had defied every expectation. Elias' refusal to show his face had never hindered her fascination. If anything, it had deepened it. Over the following weeks, humans' reputation on Zephyra grew further. They were no longer seen as fragile, unpredictable, or insignificant. They were clever, adaptable, and brave. They could solve problems that others could not, act decisively under pressure, and thrive in ways that Aurelians could only admire. Elias, as always, continued his mission with quiet determination. He did not seek recognition, admiration, or obsession. He acted for the sake of survival, problem-solving, and diplomacy. Yet with each act of ingenuity, each calm response to danger, and each decision made with care, he shaped not only the perception of his species, but also the understanding of the entire Aurelian civilization. Lurel, meanwhile, remained close, observing, learning, and reflecting. She knew that her fascination had grown into something more profound. It was respect, admiration, and an obsession with understanding the human spirit in all its complexity. She wanted to know why they acted as they did, why they chose principles over convenience, and why they refused to be fully known. And as Elias Rowan moved through the city, calm and focused, Lurel understood that this human was not just extraordinary, he was a symbol. A symbol of human ingenuity, resilience, and the quiet power of choice. Her obsession was no longer about curiosity alone. It was about respect, recognition, and the undeniable truth that humans could change the course of civilizations without ever revealing their full selves. The city of Zephyra had settled into a calm rhythm after the energy storms and the crises that had tested its very foundations. But for Lurel, peace brought no relief. Her mind was restless, consumed with thoughts of Elias Rowan. Every action he took, every decision he made, echoed in her mind. She had watched him solve problems, calm chaos, and inspire respect, yet she still did not know him fully. His face remained hidden behind the visor, and with it, an essential part of his humanity. It was not that she desired to see his physical features, though that curiosity remained. It was more than that. She wanted to understand him, to understand why humans acted as they did, why they refused to reveal themselves fully, yet achieved so much with intellect, courage, and choice. Her fascination had grown into admiration, and admiration into obsession. She thought constantly about him, analyzing his behavior, predicting his actions, and learning from every small gesture. Elias, for his part, remained calm and focused. He noticed Lurel's attention, her quiet study, but he did not comment on it. To him, observation was natural. Everyone watched everyone else in Zephyra, and humans were accustomed to scrutiny. What mattered was action, not perception. And in this, he was consistent. He acted with integrity, ingenuity, and caution, never letting curiosity or obsession affect his choices. The next challenge came unexpectedly. The city faced a potential diplomatic crisis with a neighboring Aurelian province. The province had misinterpreted the human presence on Zephyra as interference, believing that their technology and decision-making represented a threat. A delegation arrived demanding explanations, and tensions rose. The council turned to Elias, not because they expected him to negotiate, but because they knew humans had a unique way of approaching problems. Lurel accompanied him, observing closely. She noted every nuance in his behavior, every tone in his voice, every subtle gesture. Elias spoke calmly to the delegates, acknowledging their concerns while presenting facts clearly and logically. He did not attempt to dominate the conversation or assert power. Instead, he guided them through reasoning, showing them the consequences of their assumptions without confrontation. The delegates listened, visibly impressed. They had expected arrogance or naivety from a species considered weak. Instead, they encountered clarity, intelligence, and quiet authority. By the end of the discussion, tensions had eased, and agreements were made that satisfied both sides. Lurel's fascination deepened. It was not just his intelligence that amazed her. It was his approach to morality, ethics, and fairness. He did not act for recognition or reward. He acted because it was the right thing to do. This was a concept that the Aurelians valued, but Elias executed it in a way that was uniquely human, direct, flexible, and intuitive. After the meeting, Lurel spoke to him privately. "You have changed the way they see humans," she said softly. "They now regard your species with respect, even admiration. Your actions have left a mark on this world, and yet you remain enigmatic." Elias nodded. "Recognition is not my goal," he replied. "Understanding and respect are earned through action, not by seeking attention. If humans are respected for what we do, that is enough." Lurel floated beside him, her expression thoughtful. She realized that her obsession had evolved. It was no longer simply about seeing his face or satisfying curiosity. She wanted to understand the human spirit itself, the principles, the resilience, and the ingenuity that allowed them to thrive despite challenges. Over the following weeks, Elias continued to demonstrate humanity's unique strengths. When technical failures threatened minor districts of the city, he improvised solutions that Aurelians had never conceived. When disputes arose among citizens, he mediated with calm reasoning and empathy. And when small crises of energy and weather appeared, he acted decisively, balancing intuition with logic. Every action he took reinforced the growing recognition among the Aurelians that humans were not to be underestimated. Where other species relied solely on protocol or innate abilities, humans relied on adaptability, creativity, and moral judgment. Their strength lay not in physical prowess, but in choice, the ability to act in complex situations with courage and reasoning. Lurel observed this with increasing intensity. She began to emulate his approach, applying human methods of reasoning to her own work and research. She noticed subtle differences in problem-solving, noticing that her structured, calculated methods were sometimes less effective than the intuitive approaches Elias employed. It fascinated her, challenged her, and made her respect him even more. One night, while analyzing energy readings from the city, a subtle anomaly appeared. It was small but persistent, threatening to destabilize a minor district if left unchecked. Elias immediately noticed it. The Aurelians were puzzled, their calculations showing no cause for concern, but Elias' intuition told him otherwise. He directed Lurel to assist, explaining his reasoning step by step. "Observe the flow," he said. "Notice the minor fluctuations. They are small individually, but together they could grow into a larger problem. We must act now." Lurel followed his guidance, marveling at the precision and foresight in his instructions. Together, they stabilized the district, preventing damage that would have taken months to repair. The incident was minor, but the lesson was profound. Humans combined observation, reasoning, and intuition in ways that Aurelians could not fully replicate. It was during these moments of quiet collaboration that Lurel's obsession became most apparent. She no longer focused on his face or his appearance. She focused on his mind, his decisions, and the principles that guided him. She documented every action, every choice, every subtle reaction, seeking to understand the essence of human behavior. Elias noticed her attention but did not confront it. He had learned long ago that curiosity and observation were part of life, and that sometimes the most valuable lessons came from being watched. He acted with integrity, never allowing the observation to influence his decisions. It was this consistency that further impressed Lurel. The council took notice as well. Aurelians began to adopt elements of human decision-making in certain situations, recognizing the value of flexibility, intuition, and ethical reasoning. Lurel advocated for this shift, explaining that humans approached problems in a way that complemented Aurelian abilities. The city began to change subtly, incorporating human methods alongside Aurelian systems. Through all this, Elias remained firm in his principles. He did not remove his visor, he did not flaunt his abilities, and he did not seek approval. His focus was on problem-solving, diplomacy, and the mission of representing humanity with integrity. This quiet strength, this steadfastness, only deepened Lurel's fascination. One evening, as they overlooked the floating city from a high platform, Lurel spoke again. "You are unlike any being I have ever known," she said. "Your presence changes everything. You challenge expectations, inspire respect, and yet remain a mystery. I do not understand fully, but I am compelled to know more." Elias glanced at her, his expression calm beneath the visor. "Understanding takes time," he said. "Humans are not simple. We act with reason, emotion, and choice. To comprehend us fully, one must observe carefully and think deeply. Patience is necessary." Lurel nodded slowly. She understood that her obsession was not merely personal curiosity. It was the recognition of human potential, a desire to grasp a concept that was larger than any individual. Elias represented the ingenuity, resilience, and moral strength of his entire species. The following weeks brought new opportunities for collaboration. Minor crises, technical challenges, and diplomatic matters allowed Elias to demonstrate the full range of human abilities. Lurel continued to observe closely, documenting his decisions, predicting outcomes, and learning from his methods. She began to teach others, subtly spreading human strategies and reasoning throughout Zephyra. Through all this, Elias remained consistent. He acted with intelligence, courage, and integrity, never compromising his principles. His refusal to reveal his face became a symbol of human autonomy, demonstrating that strength and respect were not dependent on visibility or compliance. Lurel's obsession transformed into something deeper, admiration and understanding. She realized that humans were remarkable not because of physical strength or technological advantage, but because of choice. They could act independently, adapt creatively, and navigate complex situations with moral clarity. They were unpredictable, resilient, and extraordinary in ways that Aurelians could not fully comprehend. In quiet moments, Laurel reflected on her fascination. She realized that Elias had changed more than perceptions. He had changed minds. He had shown that humans could inspire respect, influence societies, and leave a lasting impact, all while remaining true to themselves. His presence had subtly altered Zephyra, and his influence would endure long after the immediate crises had passed. As she observed him once more, calm and composed amidst the city lights, Laurel understood a profound truth. Her obsession was not about seeing his face. It was about understanding the essence of humanity, the courage, ingenuity, and choice that defined them. She wanted to learn, to study, and to respect a species that could thrive without conforming, that could achieve greatness without revealing all of themselves. And Elias, unaware of the full depth of her attention, continued his work with quiet focus. He navigated challenges, solved problems, and represented humanity with integrity. Each act of calm determination, each creative solution, each ethical decision reinforced the growing admiration and respect he inspired. Laurel's realization was complete. Humans were extraordinary, not for what they revealed, but for how they acted. Her obsession had evolved into understanding, her fascination into admiration, and her respect into a desire to honor a species that had proven itself beyond expectation. And so, as the twin moons of Zephyra cast their silver light across the floating city, Laurel knew that Elias Rowan had achieved something extraordinary. He had not revealed his face. He had not sought recognition. Yet in every action, he had demonstrated the remarkable potential of humanity, leaving a lasting impression that would influence Zephyra, and perhaps the galaxy, forever. The city of Zephyra had changed in ways that few could have anticipated. What began as curiosity about a human visitor had grown into admiration, respect, and even a subtle transformation of Aurelian society. Elias Rowan, the human who refused to reveal his face, had become a symbol of ingenuity, resilience, and moral strength. Yet he remained calm, focused, and entirely unaware of just how deep an impression he had made. Laurel stood atop one of the crystal towers, her eyes fixed on him as he moved through the city streets. The soft glow of Zephyra's twin moons reflected in the glassy surfaces around them. She had come to understand that her obsession was not with Elias' appearance, but with the essence of his humanity, the courage, the choice, and the creativity that defined him. Each day she studied his actions, learning from his decisions, his calm resolve, and the quiet power of his principles. The Council of Zephyra had convened again, this time to discuss the long-term influence of the human visitor. Other Aurelians spoke cautiously at first, still skeptical about an outsider's impact on their society. But Laurel spoke passionately, detailing Elias' contributions during crises, his unique approach to problem-solving, and the inspiration he had provided to the citizens. "They say humans are fragile," she said. "They say we are more advanced, more precise, more capable. But Elias Rowan has shown us that humans possess qualities that cannot be measured by technology alone. They are adaptable, courageous, and guided by principles. Their strength lies not in what they show, but in what they choose to do." The council was quiet for a moment, absorbing her words. Then slowly, Aurelians began to nod in agreement. Their perception of humans had changed. They had witnessed intelligence, ingenuity, and courage beyond what they had imagined, and all of it had been accomplished without Elias ever removing his visor. Elias had been called to the council not to speak, but to observe. He remained calm, respectful, and unassuming, letting the Aurelians come to their own conclusions. He knew that true respect was earned, and that recognition for its own sake was meaningless. Yet quietly, he allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had left a mark, not through force or technology, but through example and integrity. After the council meeting, Lurel approached him. "They understand now," she said softly. "They recognize the value of humans in ways they never did before. You have changed perceptions, not only here but perhaps across other civilizations as well." Elias nodded. "That was not my goal," he replied. "I act for what is right, for the safety and well-being of all, and to represent humanity honestly. If that leads to respect, it is a fortunate outcome, but it is not the reason I act." Lurel studied him carefully, her fascination and admiration deepening. She realized that her obsession had evolved once again. It was no longer just curiosity or desire to understand. It was a profound respect for a species capable of such extraordinary resilience and ingenuity. She thought about the countless decisions he had made, the calm solutions he had created under pressure, and the quiet way he had inspired change. In the following days, Elias prepared to depart Zephyra. His mission was coming to an end, and humanity's influence had been established. The city thrived, not only because of Aurelian technology, but because of the subtle lessons in adaptability, choice, and courage that humans had demonstrated. Lurel helped coordinate his departure, though she felt a strange sense of loss. His presence had become a part of the city and of her own understanding of the universe. On the day of departure, the streets of Zephyra were filled with citizens and officials alike. They had come to witness the human who had changed their perspective, who had solved crises, and who had demonstrated the strength of a species they had once underestimated. Yet Elias moved quietly, avoiding fanfare, maintaining his calm demeanor. Lurel floated beside him, her eyes reflecting the light of the twin moons. "Do you not fear leaving?" she asked. "To go from a world that now respects you to unknown regions of space again?" Elias considered her question. "Fear exists," he admitted, "but it does not control me. Humans face uncertainty often, and we have learned to act with reason, courage, and adaptability. Leaving Zephyra is just another challenge. What matters is the mission and the integrity with which it is carried out." The Aurelians watched him silently, sensing the quiet authority in his words. There was no arrogance, no need for approval. And yet there was power, the power of choice, the power of reason, and the power of acting with integrity. In that moment, they understood the essence of humanity. Lurel felt a surge of emotion she had not expected. Her fascination, her obsession, had matured into something deeper. She admired humans not for what they showed, but for what they did, for the principles they followed, and for the resilience that defined their species. Elias Rowan had become more than a guest. He was a teacher, a symbol, and an inspiration. Before departing, Elias took a moment to speak with Lurel privately. "You have observed closely," he said. "You have learned much about humans, but there is still more to understand. Humanity is not a single individual, nor is it a single act. It is a collective choice to face challenges, to act with integrity, and to adapt in ways that ensure survival and growth. Remember this." Lurel nodded, absorbing his words. "I will," she said softly. "And I will carry these lessons forward, not just for myself, but for my people. Humans have taught us more than we realized." As the shuttle prepared for departure, Elias glanced at the city one last time. Zephyra had been a challenge, a test, and an opportunity. He had acted with care, intelligence, and courage, representing humanity honestly. And though he had never revealed his face, he had left a lasting legacy, one that would influence generations of Aurelians to come. The engines hummed, and the shuttle lifted from the crystalline platforms, moving into the sky. Citizens waved, officials bowed, and Lurel floated close to the edge of the launch platform, her gaze fixed on the departing vessel. She felt a mix of loss, admiration, and inspiration. The human had changed not just perceptions, but hearts. In the weeks following his departure, the lessons Elias had taught continued to resonate. Aurelians began to integrate human methods into their society, combining rigid calculations with intuition, fostering adaptability, and valuing choice and principle alongside precision. Laurel continued her work as a scientist and teacher, advocating for this approach and ensuring that humanity's influence endured. She often thought of Elias Rowan, the human who refused to show his face, and understood that her fascination had matured into a deep, abiding respect. He had demonstrated that strength was not just physical, intelligence was not just technical, and influence was not just through visibility. Humanity's power lay in choice, adaptability, courage, and the quiet moral integrity that guided every decision. Laurel began to share stories of him with younger Aurelians, teaching lessons of patience, observation, and ingenuity. She described the crises he had solved, the diplomacy he had navigated, and the subtle yet profound ways he had influenced their society. Every story reinforced the admiration she had cultivated, inspiring a new generation to respect humans not merely as guests, but as equals and as a model of resilience and integrity. Years passed, and the legend of Elias Rowan grew. Humans were no longer seen as fragile or weak. Their ingenuity, adaptability, and courage became known across Zephyra and neighboring civilizations. Laurel often reflected on the lessons she had learned, realizing that the human who refused to show his face had revealed something far more important, the essence of humanity itself. And though Elias was no longer present, his influence endured. The city of Zephyra thrived, enriched not only by its own advancements, but by the quiet lessons humans had left behind. Laurel continued her work, her obsession transformed into reverence, her admiration deepened into understanding, and her respect solidified into advocacy for the human spirit. In quiet moments, she would gaze at the stars, imagining the countless humans exploring the galaxy, acting with courage, ingenuity, and moral clarity. Elias Rowan had been one of many, yet his example had left an indelible mark. Through him, she had learned that strength, intelligence, and influence were not merely measured by technology or visibility, but by the choices one made and the principles one upheld. And so, as Zephyra's twin moons rose high in the sky, Laurel smiled softly. The human who refused to show his face had changed her world, her understanding, and the perception of her people. He had acted with integrity, solved impossible challenges, and inspired admiration without seeking it. In doing so, he had left a legacy that would endure for generations, a testament to the quiet, unstoppable power of humanity. Elias Rowan's journey continued among the stars, his mission ongoing, his purpose unwavering. And across Zephyra, his example lived on, reminding all who had witnessed him that humanity's greatest strength was not in appearance, technology, or power, but in choice, courage, and the quiet resilience that defined their species. The galaxy had seen humans as fragile, weak, and unpredictable. Elias had proven otherwise. And Laurel, once obsessed with seeing his face, had learned that the human spirit was far greater than any physical appearance, far stronger than any prediction, and far more extraordinary than she had ever imagined.